Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I am your co-host Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Well, hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. Our topic for today is
When is it okay to move on and start dating?
something that I actually hear about quite a bit. I guess we do that a lot, don't we? We talk about topics that I hear about quite a lot in the office, of course. Before we get into our topic for today, we would like to take this time to invite you to let other folks know about our podcast. Go ahead and what do people do? Subscribe and like and follow and comment and
tell
review.
your friends.
There's a review. Facebook actually came up with a little thing saying, tell people to review your podcast. So please review our podcast on Facebook and tell your friends. It's how people get to know about us, and more people are getting to know about us. We're getting contacted by folks. We've been interviewed for a publication. I won't say which one until it comes out, but that was kind of fun. So we hope you will let people know about our podcast. We've got some really nice reviews, and we would like you to add to that. So please do let us know. And you can go to our couplestherapyin7words.com page. And when you do that, you can get merch. Our wonderful mugs that we have for sale. For those of you who are just listening, on one side it has our beautiful logo that Judy designed. On the other side, it has our inspiring message, be kind, don't panic.
And have faith.
And have faith. And so you please do that. And also we have t-shirts in like pretty much all the sizes the t-shirts come in. And so we hope you will check that out. They make great gifts as well.
And the book, of course.
And the book, of course.
That started it all.
And that is?
Reigniting the Spark, Why Stable Relationships Lose Intimacy and How to Get It Back.
And that is available anywhere books are sold. And it is also available in several different formats. It's regular old paperback. It's also available as an audiobook where I did the narration, and it is available on Kindle as well. So we hope you will do that, and we've been getting lots of really nice reviews of that as well, and we hope you'll add to that too. So, our topic, and Judy, you were the one who suggested this topic, although as soon as you suggested it, I pointed out, as I said earlier, I see this in the office all the time, but you know, what was it that had you think of this particular topic?
Well, I was listening to actually another podcast.
Another podcast? You mean there are other people doing podcasts?
Yes, there are.
And there are actually that are quite worth listening to, as a matter of fact.
I won't say what it was because it wasn't a very good podcast.
Oh,
but
there you go. Fair enough. There's good ones, there's not so good ones.
Yeah, but it was somebody was talking about when is it okay to start dating, either when you're divorced or when you've become a widow or widower. So, and we actually had gotten a letter similar on that same topic.
Yep.
So it got me thinking, when is it okay?
And I will tell you, as soon as you mentioned that, as I said, I think about this from folks in the office. I've had a number in the past few weeks even of folks at various stages of life, but especially older folks who have lost a partner to death.
Right.
That has come up a fair amount. And, you know, it's, of course, the issue is not only the question of, you know, when are you ready to move on yourself, but of course it's a question of family members as well. And, you know, I remember my own mother, may she rest in peace, when my grandfather remarried after my grandmother's death, a number of years after my grandmother's death, married a nice woman, and she got along well with my aunts. My mother had two sisters, and so the three girls, you know, middle-aged women at the time,
Right.
and they got along well. But I remember my mother saying when they would come to stay, when my grandfather and his wife would come to stay at our house, and you know it got to be bedtime and they would go up to their room, and every time my mother would say it just caused her, you know, it wrenched her soul. And even though she liked her, you know, stepmother, I mean, it's, you know, hard to say of somebody who's in her 50s that she's got a stepmother, but she did, you know. And she liked her and appreciated her and was glad that she was making her father happy, but it was still really hard. to see that happen. There's
It's
something
very
about
hard.
that.
I know,
Yeah.
when my grandmother, my maternal grandmother,
Mm.
when she remarried, and my
Mm-hmm.
mother, I think she might have even been in her, like you said, like 50s or 60s.
Mm-hmm.
She had a tough time.
Yeah. It is
Even,
amazing.
yeah, even though her dad had been dead for like 20 years at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff it does
Maybe not
run.
quite that much, but whatever. It
It,
was more than 10
it
years. I
runs
know
deep,
that. Yeah.
and the fairy tale. What's the word I'm looking for? The not quintessence, but whatever the word I'm thinking of, of the wicked stepmother.
Uh-huh.
There's a reason why that sort of thing comes to be, and I'm not trying to diss step parents, but it is always a tricky situation, and maybe we'll do another podcast sometime. Well, we did actually on blended families. We talked about
We did.
the Brady Bunch actually.
Right.
But this one, as I say, it comes up a fair amount. And of course, my own values around this, and I don't mean to impose my own values on the folks I work with. I'm open to lots of different ways of understanding this. But I do tend to think that it's okay for people to it's okay for people to move on, of course, and I think it's okay for people to make decisions that may cause distress to their adult children, not because they want to, but in spite of the fact that their adult children may have a little trouble with it. I don't think that's a reason why somebody should abstain from possibly finding some happiness themselves. I think it needs to be done with care and compassion,
Sure.
like so many things do.
Sure.
Of course, we had our own experience of this,
We did.
and we're, I think, both very fortunate in that we have wonderful kids. Shout out to our wonderful kids.
Thank you, wonderful children.
Thank you, wonderful children. And I, maybe give us a little bit of credit as well. I certainly give you enormous amounts of credit in how it was that you met my kids, and were so. They loved you, and because they saw how happy you made me,
Yeah.
they weren't angry at me. It wasn't a situation where they were angry at me for, they certainly weren't angry at you for breaking up my marriage, because you didn't.
Right.
And they weren't angry at me for breaking up my marriage, because they weren't angry at their mother either. It was a different kind of situation. Maybe I don't know if we've ever talked about it, and I'm not going to go there right now. But that sense that I do remember it was important to each of us that our kids be okay with our getting together.
Right.
And fortunately, they all were.
Right.
And they were wonderfully gracious about it. But, that can be tricky when they're not.
Yeah, well, there are so many things that are involved. One is, when you talk about, I don't know, maybe divorce is a little bit easier than, well, I don't know.
Oh, we can go either way on that.
I was going to say it
Yeah.
might be easier than death, but, because death is so permanent. The
Yeah.
partner is so out of the picture, he or she is never coming back.
Yeah, of course,
But-
that presents other problems too.
You're right,
Right, because you can't compete with the dead saint.
right.
There is that problem that comes
Yeah,
up.
but there are other, things that come up, like adult children. They might fear that the partner could be taking advantage of the parent, as
Which
often
happens,
happens
right,
a
of
lot
course.
of times.
Yeah.
They might be upset that the partner is in it for the money and is cheating them out of their inheritance.
Yes, or the issue of when you have we each go into this with kids. Look, I don't mind revealing to our studio audience, we didn't enter into this either one of us filthy rich. Which actually made it easier,
It
because
does make
none
it
of our
easier.
kids were saying, "Oh, you're depriving us of our enormous inheritance." I mean, God willing, they'll get something when we die, but
It ain't gonna
hey
be
kids,
much.
don't plan on living on it. We're doing what we can. Hey, folks out there, if you all start buying the book like crazy, maybe we'll be leaving our children a bigger inheritance. The point being, no, it is difficult when
Right.
there is a lot of money involved.
Right.
And I've seen that a fair amount in
Right.
the office. Yeah.
But then I guess rich people can set up trust funds and other prenups and whatever.
Yeah.
So to take care of that type of thing.
They can, but it's still, they can take care of it legally,
Right.
but it can become really difficult emotionally
Yes.
around things like that.
Yes.
So, yeah, all kinds of movies are made on that sort of subject. But, more generally speaking, just the question of, how do you handle it with your adult kids? How do you handle it with yourself?
Right.
When is it too soon? And when you mention this, I want to mention, I want to give a shout out to a now deceased radio psychologist
Uh-huh.
whose name was Joy Brown. Maybe some of
Dr.
you,
Joy Brown.
Dr. Joy Brown, maybe some of you listen to her. I used to enjoy listening to her as sort of, what is that, like busman's holiday? Is that what they say? Because I would sometimes I would quote her sometimes to my clients. I would enjoy some of the stuff she had. I'll mention, one or two probably in this conversation. And then I was sometimes absolutely horrified at how she would talk to people and cut them off if they said something that really bothered her, and she would just cut them off. But one of the things she talked about in this particular thing, when is it okay to move on and start dating? She had what she referred to as the dread 1-year rule.
Uh-huh.
And the 1-year rule, the way she would articulate it, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in it, even though I completely violated it myself. Totally violated it myself.
Yes, you can listen to our How We Met story.
You can listen to our How We Met story. You'll hear how I
podcast.
violated it myself. And many of the folks I work with have, and sometimes it's fine and sometimes it isn't. But anyway, I still think it's a good general rule to go by, which is if it's a divorce, you don't start dating until a year after the divorce is final.
Yeah.
And if it's a death, you don't start dating until a year after the death. And she did often talk about what she would refer to as the senior discount. Because, somebody would call up and say, well, I'm in my 80s.
Right.
And,
what are you going to wait for? We don't have that much time.
Right. I mean,
Well,
legitimately. And she would
yes.
say, understandably, it's like, yeah, you don't have to wait around quite so long when you're like really old.
Right.
And that certainly makes sense.
I can see that.
But the wisdom, there is wisdom, even though, as I say, I violated it quite successfully, if I do say so, as many people I've worked with have. But the wisdom there is good, because if you are moving on too soon, the phenomenon of what they call, you've heard of rebound relationships, right? What constitutes a rebound relationship is less about how long ago it was and more about what happens if it's too short. Because if you're not done with the previous, or sufficiently done, who's ever done with anything totally, but if you're not sufficiently done with the previous relationship, then it's very difficult to perceive the person that you're with and actually form a relationship based on who they actually are. And, if the person that you're dating is either the anti-ex or just like the ex,
Right.
either way, if it's all about the ex, you're not done yet.
Right.
It's very difficult to actually form a relationship with someone. So you need to be done enough. And, the when it works, as in my situation, frankly, when it works, it's because often there simply was no question that the previous relationship was going to start again.
Right.
That the kind of circumstance where, oh, wow, when we met, I think I certainly was still in grief mode to some extent, but I was in no way in longing for the relationship to start again, because that simply was not possible. And I knew it, and that's what made it possible for us to split up when we did.
Right.
So, if the characteristics are right, what you end up with is not a rebound relationship. Now, it may work and it may not work, but the thing about rebound relationships is people go into them and they can get incredibly deeply involved and then come to discover the stuff that they simply have refused to see and be in big trouble down the line and can be hurt. I remember folks I've worked with who were just hurt worse from the breakup of the rebound relationship than they were from the relationship
Oh, really?
previously. Oh, yeah. Because they just feel like, it feels like it's just this affirmation that they're not lovable or dateable.
Yeah.
And that's
So in
really
other words, they were dating too soon.
they were dating
Yeah,
way too soon.
they got way too involved too soon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're just, your brain isn't ready. Your brain, heart, whatever is not ready for it. But this might be a good time to go into our listener question. You think?
Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
I think
go for
so. Okay. So we have a letter this week from Ed, and he writes, Dear Bruce and Judy, I'm a 68-year-old man. My wife, Barbara, died 8 months ago after a tough bout with COVID. I recently started dating and have struck up a close friendship with one of the women who lives in my retirement community. She is a divorcee. We are both comfortable financially, and we get along really well. So what's the problem? I have 2 grown daughters in their 30s, one married, one divorced. They are upset that I am dating so soon after their mom died. They said it is a betrayal to her memory to become so involved so soon that it's not even a year. I love my daughters, but they don't live near me, and we see each other 2 or 3 times a year. I don't have a lot of male friends, and I'm lonely. My daughters tell me women are predatory and can spot a good catch a mile away, and that this lady has probably had her eye on me since Barbara died. I don't want my daughters to be angry with me, but I also don't want to sit alone night after night. I know Barbara would not want me to be lonely because she and I talked about this very situation should one of us die. How soon is too soon to start dating?
Oh, my heart just goes out to him. I
Yeah.
feel,
Yeah.
and the part where he's saying, I know Barbara would not want to be lonely because, they talked about it.
Right.
We've talked about it. You know
We've
what I mean?
talked about it.
Yeah.
And same thing.
It-
I would not want you to be lonely.
No, and I
after
wouldn't-
go if I should predecease you. And
Chas v'sholem. God forbid.
God forbid.
and look, I'm older. I'm supposed to go first. But no, I know what you. And of course, I wouldn't want you to be lonely either. And no, that's just so sweet. It means that they really loved each other.
Right.
And that's a loving thing to tell someone and mean. And so there he is, dealing with this, and it's the 8 month thing. I mentioned Joy Brown's 1 year rule,
Right.
And she didn't get that out of nowhere. That's
Right.
a
But he
thing
is
in the.
68 years old, and he's not getting any younger.
He is now. I don't know. And I'm not speaking for Joy Brown, but since I'm 70, I'm thinking, hey, 68. That doesn't qualify for any senior discount. He's a youngster. I look at that's part of what makes me sad to look at this. It's like, oh my God, that's so young to be widowed.
Yeah.
In our generation,
Right.
in our parents' or grandparents' generation, that was no big deal.
Right.
It's like, I mean, not no big deal, but I'm saying
Yes.
it was normal.
Yes.
But this, that's young. So it's funny, the idea of waiting a year at 68, given that I'm 70, doesn't sound like so long. It's like,
No.
maybe you should wait. But the situation is such that, he has to deal with his daughters being what one could argue is kind of, they're enforcing a doctrine on him. So in 4 months, they're going to suddenly say, okay, now it's all right. I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's grief. They're having a hard time
Right.
seeing someone in that position.
Exactly.
And seems to me that's, of course, obviously normal and not surprising. And again, if you take this as sort of a moral or ethical issue, I don't think he's doing anything morally or ethically out of bounds, even knowing that it disturbs his daughters. I would be saying he needs to talk to his daughters about it in ways that it's compassionate but clear, if he can do it.
Right.
And I understand your feeling about it, and I don't want to cause you that concern, but I am going to go ahead and do it. And the thing to avoid is what so many people would do in this situation, and I talk to folks who sometimes do this, which is, in a situation like this, well, lie. Just say, okay, I'll wait, and then not wait.
Right.
Or avoid. That doesn't work so well either. Or, get so worked up about it that it becomes the center of his concern. You know what I mean? Get totally worked up about whether they approve or don't approve.
Yeah.
As opposed to, with respect and love and compassion, just letting them have their feelings and, being open to them, but not letting
Right,
them
and
control
letting
them.
him know that, letting the girls know that just because he is seeing somebody, it doesn't diminish his feelings for their mom, and that I can only guess that he told them that he and Barbara talked about this before she died.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what she would have wanted, and he has grieved. I think it is a little bit tougher on men when their wives die, because so, like he said, he doesn't have a lot of male friends, because so often you see women are the drivers in the social lives in relationships.
Absolutely.
They're the ones that make the plans, they're the ones that they have the girlfriends, and like the husbands come along for the play date.
Does that sound familiar? I can't imagine what you're referring to. Yeah, of course. That is very, very common.
Right.
And indeed, that is true. And it's funny when he talks about them saying that his daughters say that women are predatory, and she had her eye on him.
Right.
And I'm thinking, okay, you can call that predatory, or you can say it's kind of the normal order of things. Why wouldn't the woman that he's involved with
Right.
have been interested in a guy who seems like
lonely too.
right? He seems like a
mensch.
He's a catch.
He's a catch.
Why shouldn't she be wanting to? That phenomenon, and you hear about this, and men hear about this, right? That's because men usually die before women, right? So
Right.
where you have an older man
Uh-huh.
who's the survivor,
Right.
it's right. Women are all around. You know, they're all bringing him hot dishes. You
I
know?
know. I know. One of my
Yeah.
girlfriends said when her mom died,
Mhm.
her dad was inundated. Like women from the senior center were there. Like every night, somebody else was bringing him dinner, and
Yeah, yeah,
and he didn't want to get married again.
yeah, yeah.
And he said, he was fine with what was going on, but he found it very funny. Like all these women suddenly went.
Sure. But I'm just saying I don't pathologize that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, sure, that's if people are interested,
People are
that's what they
lonely,
do.
You get to a certain age, you've lived a life with
Yeah.
somebody.
I mean, this is
lonely,
not catfishing, isn't that the term? You know, catfishing is the thing on the internet where somebody pretends to be someone else who's
Yeah,
in
yeah,
love with
yeah.
you and takes your money.
Right,
You know, he
No,
pointed
this is
that out.
not
They're both
catfishing.
comfortable financially.
right,
There's no indication here that she's trying to scheme to get something from him.
Right.
I mean, look, things like that are possible.
right.
They
They are
happen.
possible, but it seems like they're two lonely older people. She's a divorcee, he's
Yeah.
a widower. They want companionship.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and maybe more than that too.
Sure, exactly. And you know,
I think that's something that kids don't think about either. That their father might be a sexual being, and he might want to be having a physical relationship with somebody too.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's not going to be their mother anymore, and there's only so much you can have with your right hand,
So to speak.
so to speak,
No,
or
that's
left hand.
very true, and
Excuse
that's
me.
right. And you got me slightly distracted with that thought, but no, that idea that his daughters would have difficulty with that. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, well, of course, kids generally don't want to think about their parents having sex,
Right.
even their own parents with each other having
Exactly.
sex. Certainly not. It feels somehow unfaithful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what he's saying
Right.
that they're
Right.
saying, but. This is one of those circumstances, and this, again, I can generalize this beyond this particular situation, where it is often the case that people, again, especially with adult kids or with adult parents, adults with their parents,
Right.
need to be able to be respectful and clear, even if they are disagreeing,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if they are disagreeing
Sure.
with their loved ones.
Right.
So, I know where you're coming from, and I get it, and I even sympathize with it. And actually, I am making a different decision than you wish I would make, and I'm doing it with in good faith. You know what I mean? I'm owning it, and I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong. But I do feel bad about that it causes you pain, and I hope over time, and I hope it isn't very long, you'll be able to relax and feel good, and appreciate the fact that here is what turns out to be a really good woman. I'm sure that's
Right.
what he's experiencing, who is making me happy, and I hope you will get to know her and enjoy knowing her.
And it might help if they went for some family therapy in
It could.
this.
Yeah.
It might bring out some things that maybe the girls aren't expressing to him. They might be saying some things, but there could be deeper things there that they need to process and that he needs to process with them, so they might be able to benefit from that.
Absolutely. Just this past week, I was contacted with a situation for various reasons I'm not ending up working with, but someone in that very situation who was
Oh,
looking
is that
to,
right?
yeah, it was someone who was looking to work with his adult kids
Mm-hmm.
to deal with that situation. And this again is also a fairly common one. That one was a divorce
Mm-hmm.
where he and his new wife each shocked their respective spouses by saying they're leaving them
Oh,
for each other.
so that's a different situation.
That's a different situation.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me how that is of course it's a different situation, and yet to the daughters here, to Ed's daughters,
Mm-hmm.
it can feel remarkably similar.
Sure.
Even though it so isn't morally,
Mm-hmm.
but it can feel that way emotionally. So I hope that helps out, Ed.
I hope so, Ed.
yeah.
We're pulling for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's just so touching. That he's so young, says the old guy over here, and it's just so sweet that how he talks about what his wife would have wanted because they actually talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
That just seems to me like genuine love.
Sure.
It's not about possession.
Well, I think that's it. If you really love somebody and
Yeah.
you know that you're not going to be around, then
Mm-hmm.
you want that person to be happy.
Yeah.
And you know it can't be you
Yeah.
if you're the one leaving the planet.
Yeah.
But you want to leave knowing that your partner is going to be happy at some point.
Well, that's
it's like
what-
not the next day, but
Well, isn't that interesting? You know, it's funny because I said sort of moments ago, parenthetically, I said, it's not about possession. And I actually had this conversation with a couple a week or two ago where it's a little about possession. You know, isn't it? It's like, yeah, let's not disown. There are parts of us that aren't the politically correct parts, that aren't the pretty
Right.
parts. But it's like, I don't want you messing around with anybody else. And I don't think you want me messing around with anybody else, right?
well, not while I'm alive.
Well, exactly. Now, right.
But
After
if
I'm
God
dead,
forbid
different
I
story.
should,
Right.
go,
Totally
I
different.
don't want you to be lonely.
No, that's the part where we
Yeah.
can be loving. But
Right.
you know, the possession part. I just want to put in a word for the unpopular thing there. I like to do that. You know, that no, we do like to have the sense. I want to feel like you own me, and I want to feel like I own you. Not in a horrible, oppressive, pernicious sense.
Right.
But in the sense of. This is another one that's come up every now and again in my office where one person will say to the other, well, if I cheated, would you be upset? And the answer better be yes. And occasionally it's no.
Huh.
And that really says something about the state of their relationship.
Yeah.
When somebody says, if I cheated, would you mind? They say, I don't care. and it's often that they're having some sort of serious intimacy issue.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not, wholesale casting out the notion of polyamory.
Yeah.
Though as I've so often pointed out, I have yet to see in my office the individuals or couples or more than two or whatever, in a polyamorous relationship that is working well. But that's not because that's not possible. That's because they're in my office.
Right.
I mean, what are they doing in my office? Because things aren't going well,
Right.
folks. Nobody makes an appointment with me just to say how well things are going.
Exactly.
Except, by the way, I have to put in my exception.
Ah.
Except premarital counseling. I just had another one of those come up that I'll be starting with
Oh,
shortly.
okay.
They're doing fine, and they just want to make sure they keep doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
Great, that's fun. But generally speaking, and I have yet to have a premarital counseling for a polyamorous group. Hasn't happened yet. So I don't mean by saying, hey, possession's kind of part of the deal, but even I have worked with folks who are polyamorous, about not so much about their polyamorous relationships. And typically when they got rules, you know what I mean? There are people, you can cheat in a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything goes. To folks who are actually in polyamorous relationships, my apology for whatever the equivalent of mansplaining is. What is it, monosplaining? Whatever that would be. It's like, no, I don't mean to tell you what you know more about than I do. But that is that element of possession. If you look at our primate cousins, another thing I'm not an expert on, but the primates, like they'll have alpha males and alpha females, and they'll have ownership.
Right,
It's
right.
like, don't mess around with my mate. And there's something important about that. It's not the whole story, but it's a piece of the story. So anyway, best wishes to Ed. I hope that works out well.
Mm-hmm. And I hope your girls can come to terms with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there we have it. So if you have questions that you would like us to answer or read on the air, please feel free to write to us. You can write Bruce at couplestherapyin7words.com or Judy at couplestherapyin7words.com.
and once you've done that in your email once, you don't have to write the whole darn thing out constantly. It'll be in there and it'll pop up. So
Right,
there
so
you go.
just go to our website, couplestherapyin7words.com.
That works well. You'll see it right up above our heads when you're watching this, for those of you who are watching it.
And you can sign up if you'd like to be interviewed, or if you have suggestions of guests you would like us to interview or topics you would like us to address. Please write to us.
All of the above. And of course, send us some feedback about what you like, what you don't like, all that kind of stuff. And of course, tell your friends. So you can follow us wherever you get your podcast and subscribe and do whatever it is you do in your particular source of podcasts. We're available on most of them,
Right.
I think. We sign up on one and then they just sign you up on a whole bunch of other ones, and that's how the word gets out.
Around. Yes.
And we would like to put in a word for the book.
Reigniting the Spark, Why Stable Relationships Lose Intimacy and How to Get It Back.
Available anywhere books are sold. Please check it out. More and more folks who come to see me have read the book, and that's part of why they come to see me, I think. And people who are, I've heard actually from some folks who saw me a while ago and they got the book and enjoyed the book, so that's nice to hear.
Yeah, we're hearing good things from people about the book.
Yes,
so
indeed. And not to make any promissory notes, but I'm working on another one, and so you'll see that, not for a while, but eventually that we're hoping that will come out as well. So, until next time,
remember, be kind
don't panic.
and have faith.